So I needed to switch out my deck. And this got me thinking, maybe I should make a video about when it's time to change your deck. I had this deck on for a couple of weeks, and part of that is because I got COVID and I was off my board for a part of time. But as far as heavy skate sessions, this board's probably been through about 3. And that's usually my sweet spot for a deck's life. Once I've had 3 real long skate sessions, the board's no longer any good. And I'll give you some reasons for that. So first, let me give you a little bit of backstory about how I used to go about changing decks. Now, when I first started skating, I was 13 years old. I come from a background, not very much money. So I can count on one hand the amount of times that a complete or even a brand new deck were purchased for me. Most of the time it was like me scrounging up for money to get a deck, and then eventually I got sponsors which made the load a little easier. But my first deck, 7.5 inch World Industries Hammer Time with Destructo trucks, consolidated Black Death wheels, as well as perforated red consolidated ABEX 7 bearings. I skated that deck for nearly 5 months, and it was to the point where the nose and tail had gone back inches. You know, there was barely any nose and tail left, but I was able to learn how to do a good ollie, how to do slappy nose slides, how to do kick flips, how to do pop shove-its, almost how to do varial flips, but not quite on that board. And over the years, as I got better and I was able to acquire boards easily, obviously I started to switch boards quicker. Not necessarily as quickly as I do now because I simply wasn't able to. But let me explain how I go about changing them now as opposed to back then. Back then it was about when I could get my hands on a board, and now it's what's gonna make it best for me to skate, what's gonna keep me able to land tricks and keep me from getting injured, which is more important for someone my size. So to some of you guys, this board might look like it has a lot of life left in it. And that's why typically if I don't break a deck, I will give it to someone else when I'm done with it, because I understand how valuable these things are, especially to kids, and especially kids that come from a background similar to mine, where no one's gonna buy you a board. But for me, this board had a little bit too much flex in the middle and flex in the tail. So that means when I crouch down to apply pressure to the tail or the nose to pop, the board isn't resisting me the same way it was initially. And a little bit of flex is a good thing. You know, you guys have probably seen people like my friend Neen Williams, who runs over his deck with his car before he skates it to get some flex. And Bastian Salavanzi was the first person that I ever saw do this. He would jump up and down on his boards relentlessly to get some flex to them. And I have done this from time to time depending on the deck. I tend to not do it as much anymore because the shape is the main thing that matters. The shape, the length, the wheelbase, the size of the nose and tail. As long as all that's good, I can work my board into whatever state I needed to get into. But I used to do a little bit of this myself. And flex has its benefits. For instance, if I'm gonna skate a handrail, I don't want my board to have any flex. I want it to feel like a solid rock underneath my feet. The only thing I want to be worrying about failure from is my own body. So I want that board to be solid as a rock if I'm going to skate a handrail, because I need something solid beneath me. If I'm going to skate a set of stairs, you would think that it would be the same. However, it's not, because I tend to break a lot of board skating stairs. So a deck that has a little bit of more flex is going to give me some leeway and not have me end up breaking the board so quickly. So typically, if I'm gonna skate a handrail spot, I'm gonna do it on a brand new deck. And if I'm gonna skate a stair spot, I'm gonna do it on a deck that might have had 1 session at the skate park, maybe 2 sessions at the skate park. Probably not a street session though, because street sessions wear your board down at an extremely higher pace than the skate park. And this comes into the ground that you're skating and a bunch of other factors. Now, if I'm skating ledges on a board, a brand new board or even a 2-day-old board is actually awful in my opinion. Because if I'm skating normal sized ledges, and I have the pop that I have on a brand new board, a lot of times it ends up being too much and I'm sacrificing precision. So, and if I have a board that's too soggy and I'm trying like nollie, heel flip, crooked grinds, I might keep getting into nollie, heel flip, no slides, but not having enough resistance and enough pop to have a precise nollie, heel flip to crooked grind. So ledge tricks and technical tricks, I like my board to be like 2 or 3 sessions in, and that could even be street sessions, as long as it's not cheese grater ground that's gonna mess up the plies and get it closer to razor tail. And that's the next thing that I want to talk about after I get done talking about the different applications for different boards. The other thing is transition. I found that a really old board is gonna skate well in transition for me, and I don't know why that is. I think it's something that has to do with comfort, because I personally am not very comfortable skating transition. I didn't grow up skating it. I never really had a desire to skate it, and I only skate it more often now because we have a plethora of skate parks around, and it's usually a good way to flow from one trick to the next if you're at a park that has transition, so I'll do it. Or I'm with my friends and they're skating a transition spot. But it tends to be a time when my board is worn down, when I feel comfortable. My board's brand new on transition, doesn't have any flex, doesn't feel good me sliding into, let's say, front and backside tail slides, or giving it that scoop for a backside disaster. That just feels a little better on a board that's worn down. So in my opinion, the life of a board goes like this. First day is for handrails, first session. Second session is gonna be for skating stairs or anything like that. Third, fourth session are gonna be for skating ledges, and anything after that third session is gonna be good for transition, street transition, anything like that. Spots where I pop my board. Oh, that's another thing. Spots where you're popping off of a bump. I also have a hard time skating a brand new deck for those. And it boils down to the resistance that the board offers. Since the board has less flex, it's harder to pop for me on a ramp because you're slanted, and the ramp is making it so that you have to apply extra pressure to get your board to pop. Also, I skate a very long board, and a lot of street spots that have bumps, the bumps are shorter than my deck. So if my deck is too rigid, it's really hard to find the sweet spot where I can pop. Now, for you guys who might be beginners, you guys who might not be switching your boards out as frequently as I am, it's gonna come down to this. If you have the ability to switch your board financially, or you have access to a board, when's a good time to switch? So I would say, if you look at your deck, there are typically 7 of these veneers, these plies, 7 ply boards. Sometimes there are 8 of them. And the way that your nose and tail wear down is that you start to wear away at the first ply. And typically you're gonna go through this in the second ply in your first session, right? Right now, I'm about down to where the third ply started to wear down. And for me, that's where the board sometimes gets a little too soggy to skate. But if you're a smaller person, if you weigh under 200 pounds, this is probably not gonna be as much of an issue for you because you don't have as much weight to counteract and use leverage to counter when you're popping. So you're gonna wanna skate your board basically until the edge has 1 ply left. So when you see that your board's worn up to about this point, and you can see each ply down to the 7th, after that, your deck is gonna start to chip away at the tail, right? So you're gonna start to get razor tail, which is when the tail gets sharp. And once you get to that point, your tail's gonna start to break away and chip. And the reason I say if you have the ability to switch it at this point, you should, is because once your tail starts to shorten, that means your board is shorter overall. That means you have to start to alter the way that you skate to compensate for this. And if your goal is to get as good as you possibly can, that's not an optimal situation to have a deck that's shorter, to have you switching your stance to accommodate for changes in your deck. Now, if you don't have the ability to switch out your board, I completely understand, and skate your board until you can't skate it anymore. You'd be surprised what I did. I remember I skated 7.5-inch decks, and had no money to get a deck. Parents wouldn't buy me a deck, and I knew someone who had an 8.5 inch deck, which at that time was insane. Only like vert skaters skated it. It was believed, which is completely untrue now. Now we know that beginners can skate big boards and they actually learn quicker, because kids definitely learn a lot quicker today than they did when I was a kid. When I was a kid, it was rare to find someone who could even kickflip at your school or in your group of skaters. Today, that's commonplace, and beyond that is commonplace, and everyone seems to be skating 8.5s and sometimes even bigger. But what I did is, there was a guy whose lawn I would mow, and he had power tools. And so I took this 8.5 inch board and measured half an inch on each side and got it as even as I possibly could, and had this guy cut the 8.5 inch deck to a 7.5 inch deck, and then sanded down the sides into this awkward Franken deck that I actually skated for about a month until I could get my hands on another board. So yeah, you guys want to skate the deck until you see all of the plies and just before razor tail if you're under 200 pounds, and if you have access to more boards. Now, if you don't have access to other boards, by all means, skate your board as long as you possibly can. Some things to stay away from if you're trying to prolong the life of your board. For one, don't leave your board in your trunk, right? If you leave your board in the trunk, depending on the weather, it's gonna warp. When your board warps, it's gonna get soggier, it's gonna have less resistance, your tricks are gonna have less snap, and you're gonna have to accommodate for that change in your deck, which again, I mentioned earlier, is not something we wanna do. Another thing, don't get your board wet, okay? There's no benefit to getting your board wet, and today is most likely not the last day you're gonna have to skate, so if it's wet out, just don't skate, unless you have another board on tap, more wheels and bearings too, because the moisture will wreck all of that too. Just keep your board dry as possible. Another thing, don't leave it outside. A lot of people like to get home, leave the board outside, so it's right under the sun. Again, it's gonna cause the board to warp. It's also gonna make your grip tape less effective. The sun affects every aspect of your board. You know, the sun is extremely damaging, even to our skin. That's why we wear sunblock, cover ourselves up and things like that. So keep your board out of the trunk because it'll warp. Keep your board out of the sun because it's gonna render it ineffective in other ways. Keep your board out of moisture. And some more advice, you guys, if you see a sale at the skate shop and they've got multiple decks that you can get at a time, buy those, because the more decks you have on hand, the better. Skateboarding is expensive. It takes a lot of work to learn, and it takes a lot of skating to get good. So you want to get the most out of your product. Now I am going to go skate, and I'm going to go give this deck to someone that I see that needs it. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know if there's something else you want me to tackle in the comments.